Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
How is everybody?
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here today. So the first thing I want to do is I want everybody to join this truth circle that we're going to start off our day with. Who here, by a show of hands, prefers to cut over color behind the chair? And who here prefers to color instead of cut behind the chair? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your honesty. So, I personally am someone that for years was extremely drawn to color and hated cutting because I felt like I wasn't able to use my creative ability as much when cutting as when coloring, which in turn made me start to resent it. And after, having a little truth circle with myself, I realized that I wanted to dedicate more of my time into cutting to better understand it and to be able to create a personalized creative look for all of my clients, no matter their backgrounds or the type of style that they have. So after taking a lot of training, I have now become extremely obsessed with cutting. It's crazy how things switch. So the reason I'm here today is to share my love and my passion within cutting with you guys. That way we can take different techniques and different ways to use our different tools to create an overall advanced look for our guests. How does that sound?
Great.
Woo.
Awesome. So, my name is Erica Moomey, and I am a L'Oreal professional artist. I'm based in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been working behind the chair for a little over 10 years now, and I've been an artist for 3 years. So I work 5 days behind the chair, and I traveled pretty much every weekend, so I have zero social life, and it's fine. My best friends are mannequin heads. If you watch my Instagram story, you will see them featured daily. Follow me at Erica Lee Moomey on Insta. So let's go ahead and dive in. We have prepped Natalie today with the Blondifier shampoo and conditioner because she is a new blonde. And we've also prepped her with the Densité. This is one of my do or die all-time favorite products that we carry because it's so versatile. I love to use it as a cutting lotion, but since we're cutting her dry today, I still prepped her with it before we smoothed her out just to give her hair enough grip for my comb to hold on to, and it will also help us not get staticky with the dry cut throughout the rest of the day. Today, we're gonna be focusing on dry cutting her hair. So, as you can see, we're starting off with a one length lob, a little bit grown out, and because she's growing her hair out, our main goal is to give her more of a look, because I personally can say that growing from one haircut to the next is not easy, hence the pigtails, because I'm growing out a pixie cut. So my biggest struggle has been finding a cut that feels that it shows my personality, has enough edge, but is still a great look. So that's what we're gonna do for Natalie here today. We're going to go in and add in some seamless layering using different personalization techniques. And we are also going to take her fringe and make it more into a curtain inspired fringe just to sass her cut up a little bit more for the grow out process. How does that sound, everybody?
Great.
Woo.
Okay. How does everyone here feel about dry cutting? Do we love it? Do we hate it?
Kind of scares me.
Kind of scares you. Do you mind if I ask what about it is intimidating?
You can just see so much more, so it's more intimidating to me because I just know once I cut, I'll automatically see what I do and if I made a mistake or not.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your feedback. So when it comes to dry cutting, I personally am obsessed with it for that reason. However, I do feel that there is definitely a time and a place to use wet cutting and or dry cutting. It's definitely going to be situational, and that's how all of our consultations with our clients will go. We are going to decide when we would want to cut wet versus when we want to cut dry, because Natalie's growing out her haircut and we're working to get more length. but our ultimate goal is to sass it up and give it a little bit more of a look for her. That's why I'm gonna choose to do dry cutting today, because I don't wanna give her an entirely new cut. I just want to advance the cut that she already has, so that way she stands out compared to the other clients that are leaving my chair on a daily basis. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So, the first thing that we're gonna do today is I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna comb her hair out, because I wanna see it at its natural fall. That is my favorite part of dry cutting, because when I'm working at natural fall, I know that that's where the hair lives. And if I know where the hair lives, I can decide how I'm gonna cut it, knowing that regardless if I'm styling her hair or if Natalie's styling her hair, it's always gonna work. Because I feel that whenever we have clients in our chair and we give them the best haircut on the planet, if they can't go home and replicate the way that we're styling it when they leave, it could be the best haircut, but our clients are gonna think that it's the worst haircut, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So working with natural fall is gonna help avoid those feelings coming from our clients whenever they come back in 6 weeks. Natalie's hair is fairly dense, which in turn will kind of have it start to lay kind of flat. Do you feel that way whenever you style?
Yes.
So the first thing that we're gonna do is I'm gonna start with some deep point cutting. I'm gonna be working around her head, but I wanna keep it above her parietal ridge. Does anybody wanna take a guess on why we wanna keep it above the parietal ridge?
You don't want to have the perimeter get too thin?
Bingo! That is exactly right. So one of the things that I find that I've struggled with in the past was I wanted these textured, lived-in looks. And when going in and cutting, I would start to get the texture, but I would lose my baseline of the cut. The reason we want to keep it above the parietal ridge is because then we're not going to be removing any weight or length off of her ends, which for somebody that's growing out their hair is ideal. So the section that I'm going to take today is going to be a pea pod section, or a diamond inspired section, which when I'm going to be taking it off the head like this, but I want to keep it above the parietal ridge, because when I'm taking my pea pod sections, I will be removing the smallest amount of hair from the highest point of her head and from the parietal, because we want to make sure we're keeping the density on her ends, but I'll be removing the most weight from that center portion of the pea pod. Move her chair down just a smidge, because I am not gifted in the height department. And that's as low as it goes. Good thing I wore my platforms. I'm gonna be working in fairly narrow sections because I wanna be able to spread out the hair and really see where the density is at within, hence internal layering. I can really see when I'm looking at my section that she's a little bit more dense through here and through here. So that's where I'm going to focus on removing the weight. By taking my shears and gently opening and closing as I'm working in deeper into my section. The best part that I find about dry cutting is that it does not lie. So as soon as we decide where we're gonna take that weight out or cut, once we drop our section, it's gonna show us exactly what we're gonna get. Another thing to keep in mind is with each section, I'm going back through and double checking her perimeter to make sure I'm not leaving anything too fine. Because even though mullets are in, if that's not what she's after, she's not gonna be very happy. I'm assuming you don't want a mullet?
I do not want a mullet, thank you.
Maybe next time.
Maybe not.
They're coming back, guys. Is this something that anyone is already doing behind the chair with their clients?
Yes,
Yes.
a little bit.
How do you feel about it?
I think it helps me remove weight more intentionally.
Absolutely.
Just going in blindly with my thinning shears.
Absolutely. I know that I personally had a love-hate relationship with my blending or texturizing shears, because let's be honest, I used them as a Band-Aid. So whenever I felt like I was running out of time or maybe I was working with a hair texture that was just overwhelmingly dense. So I felt that instead of point cutting, I was going in with my blending shears and just thinning over and over. And then 6 weeks later, when my client would come back and ask for the same exact haircut, okay, it's comical because I couldn't find what I previously had done. So whenever I'm going in with these specific personalization techniques, I can get, it guarantees that I can replicate it because I am going in with intention. We can really see how dense she is here on this side. And I'm creating these peaks and valleys. Is this something that maybe I would do on wet hair as well?
Sure.
Absolutely. It's definitely something that we can do on wet hair. I personally like to keep it more on dry hair because I feel like my intentions are stronger because the hair doesn't clump up like it does whenever it's wet. So it's really showing its truth with each snip. Alexa.
Will you explain how you're holding the hair? I
Yes.
noticed that you have an extra finger holding it. Why is that?
Yes, so this is what I like to call the triple clamp. So generally, whenever we'll pull up a section, we'll use our piece fingers to hold our section. But because I am short, I don't want to have my elbow way up here above my shoulder because it's not good on the body, and I've really been working on my posture. So to make it easier on myself, I'm gonna add in a third finger. So I'm still using my peace sign, but I'm taking my ring finger and I'm placing it behind. This is gonna stabilize my section. So whenever I drop my elevation, the hair stays in the same spot, as opposed to when I'm pulling up with two fingers and I drop my elevation, I can get a bevel in the hair, which in turn I can accidentally take out hair maybe a little deeper than I want to. So enter the triple clamp and my section is going to be stabilized. I also find that this works fantastic for punch cutting or cutting and texturizing from the inside out, which we're going to cover in just a second. Does that answer your question, Alexa?
It does, thank you.
Thank you so much. So after I'm going in and removing the weight, this is when I'm going to decide to take a different approach to add texture in. My second favorite way of personalization is with twist cutting, and this is a technique that I use on all lengths. So whether it be a pixie cut, a mid-length cut, a long haircut, this will work on so many different shapes. It's a very, very easy method and a very visual one. So continuing to work above her parietal ridge, I'm gonna take my sections, and this I'm gonna decide where I'm choosing from based off of my natural fall again, but also the spots on her cut that I really wanna detail out. So because I know that we're gonna go in and create a curtain fringe here in a minute, I wanna add in a little bit more tousled look, a little bit more of a tousled look throughout. I wanna see a little bit more wispiness on the top without sacrificing her perimeter. So first thing I'm gonna do is decide where I wanna pull from. In this case, I don't wanna give her a face frame because I really want to make sure the curtain fringe stands out. Also, because she is growing, I don't wanna add in a face frame because I don't wanna lose any of my weight here. But I also don't want this to just hang flat because that's what we see when we look in the mirror. So everything that's visual to ourselves and our clients when looking in a mirror, I feel is the most important part of the cut because that's our money piece, but within cutting. I'm gonna take my section, hold it between my piece fingers, and I'm going to flip it back once. So what this does is this exposes the underneath of the hair, which is honestly an extremely important part because short hair pushes long hair. That is something that I have been told over and over and over throughout my career, and it literally made no sense to me until about a year ago. So if I were to put my shortest piece of hair up here on top, what's that gonna do for me?
Push down.
Push down. Exactly. Even though a lot of the time, whenever I'm working with one of my clients and they want more volume or more height, the first thing we do is, oh, let's add layers. In reality, it ends up being a decoration. It's just gonna sit on top, and if it's a big enough piece, what it can do is push into the rest of that cut and cause an indention, AKA the Rachel, which I hear it's coming back, we shall see. But because I want more than just an ornament within the cut, I'm going to cut in the underneath. This is gonna put my shortest piece here in the underneath, which then is gonna push the long hair on top of it in the direction I wanna go. Because of the shape that we're going for, I want the pieces to kind of flow back away from her face. That way it will expose her cheekbones. So by taking my section, flipping once, I'm gonna use the center of my shear and slowly open and close as I slide down my section. I'm using very, very light tension. And no elevation, because we want to sit at natural fall. What you see is what you get. This is also really awesome to add in layers on a really long haircut for fine clients. So maybe those clients that ask for all of these layers and all of the movement, but they have fine hair, we know that if we were to add in layering, a lot of the time it's going to loop, it will cause the ends to be almost stringy, which we all know that's not a great look for long hair. So in order to get that movement, instead of layering, I like to go in and twist cut my layers in. So you get a perfect little marriage between technical and visual hair cutting, which is my jam because I was not created to be 100% Vidal Sassoon. Rest in peace.
Respect.
Can everyone see the subtle but huge differences that this is making in her cut? It's kind of just trending it up a little bit more. It's gonna make it so much easier for her to get that really beautiful lived in, I woke up like this look without sacrificing her end goal. I'm starting to really like everything that's happening around her face. However, I do feel that if we turn her to the back, we can really see how dense everything is back here still. Do you agree?
Yes.
So I want to go in and add movement there because, I mean, looking at a cut that's all fun and sexy in the front and then just straight in the back, not so much a win in my book. So the way that we're gonna remove weight here is I'm gonna actually turn her to the side so that way you guys can see from this angle. Still working in my pea pod shaped sections. Because she is so dense, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop down a little bit further with my sectioning now. Instead of keeping it completely above the parietal, I'm gonna drop down right on my occipital in the back is where my point of the pea pod's gonna come. Making sure to double check that her density is still where I want it on her ends. If it's not, I'm just gonna bring my section up a little bit higher and not so low on her occipital. So with fine haired clients, this is a situation where I would still be working up higher. The way that I would decide is 100% gonna be based on what's left here on the ends. So now that I have my section, gonna take my triple clamp, and you can see just pulling this out how dense this is. And instead of point cutting in, I'm gonna point cut inside out because it's gonna help me remove a little bit more. Still using the middle part of my shear because that's gonna be the sharpest part of our shears, regardless of what brand or company you prefer to use. If you can hear it, get your shear sharpened. Can you feel any pull or anything, Natalie?
No, I cannot.
Perfect. If you notice that your client is wincing, get your shear sharpened. I can see where she's a little bit more dense here. And I'm almost creating a C shape with it. For a more lived in look, I'm gonna go in and out at different angles. If I continue to replicate the same exact C shape throughout, what can happen is I can actually end up creating weight. If I'm removing weight from the same exact spot all the way around her head, similar to what I personally used to do with my thinning shears, going in and chomp, chomp, and then all of a sudden very dense and then wispy on the ends, I want to avoid that. So making sure I'm going in at different depths within my sections, so that way I'm not creating a weight line within a weight line. What questions do we have?
What are you gonna do next?
So after I remove the amount of weight that I wanted to, which I feel like I'm really digging where we're at now. Now we're gonna move into sectioning for a curtain fringe. As you can see, we've sectioned out Natalie for her curtain fringe. This I find super important to really make sure that we know where we're sectioning from, because we wanna make sure our fringe falls exactly the same on our client every day, because a lot of the times what can happen is if we take hair out of where it lives for a fringe, it's gonna lay in weird areas, whether it be on the side or in the back. So the way I'm gonna find her sectioning is by finding the highest point of her head before it, or where it will start to dip down. A lot of the times I like to find this on damp and or dry hair, because it won't lie to you, the hair will start to section out on its own. Now that we have our triangular section, the first thing that we're gonna do is I'm gonna take a center profile section from the center of my triangle, like so. And this is where I'm gonna create my guide. Because a curtain fringe is gonna separate, it's gonna be shorter in the center and longer and wispier on her sides, I wanna make sure that the hair coming from here is the longest, the hair coming from here is gonna be the shortest. Being that Natalie already has a fringe, we're really just gonna be enhancing it. And I do find that because of all of the fringe trends from last year, this is a common situation. So another way to just sass up something that someone's growing out already. I'm gonna take my section and pull everything completely forward. Because I wanna save the majority of her length, I'm not gonna be taking off a ton of length today. However, I am gonna take this in the very front a little bit shorter than what it is. We can either point cut or blunt cut and then go back in and texturize. But to kill two birds with one stone, I'm gonna go in and point cut so that way I'm already putting in that movement as I'm cutting and not doing two cuts in one sitting. To make sure I'm not cutting myself, I'm closing my shear as I'm pulling out. I'm gonna drop my guide. So I'm liking where this is hitting right between her brows for her shortest length of her fringe. Now that I've created my guide, I'm gonna cut one side first, and then I'll switch and cut the opposite side. I'm gonna take one half of my triangle, and I'm going to over direct back to that original center profile part where we cut our guide. So that way I'm creating that short to long.
Do you use your middle guide for both sides?
Yes, ma'am. But you can see by over directing how that's making this nice and soft and moving us from more of a blunt fringe to a more curtain inspired fringe. I'm gonna grab from my opposite side, making sure I'm over directing back to center. This is a really important spot to make sure our body positioning is in the correct area, because if you're anything like me, you'll end up with one side shorter than the other. And from much trial and error, body positioning is the reason why. So behind the chair, I like to turn my client to the side and use my mirror. So that way I can ensure that my body and gravity are not pushing and pulling in any direction that I don't want it. I also recommend recording yourself while doing it because that was a painful, eye-opening moment in my life. So we can already see how soft and cute this fringe is starting to look on Natalie. Once I know that I'm happy with my length, now I'm gonna go in and just detail out the slightest bit. I'm gonna use a little bit of slide cutting on her just to detail out and remove a little bit of weight because I don't wanna use my thinning shears because I don't want to take the chance of creating a weight line within a weight line. And have Natalie tilt her head to the side and I'm gonna go in and I'm actually gonna channel cut at natural fall. You can see I'm just slowly opening and closing my shear. And the angle that my shear is directed is the angle that short to long is gonna push. So in this case, I don't want the fringe to come forward. I want everything to slightly flow backwards. So I'm making sure I'm using the pitch of my shear to guide where the short is and where the long is. What questions do we have?
You held your wrist upside down on the other side and now you're holding it. Yes, why did you do that?
The reason I'm switching my hand positioning is because I want to make sure that my shear is in the same direction on each side. So if I were to hold my shear down when I cut, it's actually going to push that short to long to where the hair is going to push forward as opposed to away.
Perfect.
How's this starting to look to everybody?
Awesome.
Do we love it?
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start getting Natalie prepped to style out. I'm gonna show you guys some really quick, awesome behind the chair styling techniques that take 5 seconds to teach to your clients and they'll love you forever. How does that sound?
Yes.
Awesome, let's do it. To complete Natalie's look, we are going in today creating a nice, beautiful tousled look to finish her out. We're gonna do this by using a 1.5 inch iron as well as Infinium 3. This is my favorite hairspray by L'Oreal Professional. What it's gonna do, it's gonna give us a nice, seamless, brushable hold without making her texture crunchy because nobody likes crunch. And the way that we're gonna add in this movement is I'm gonna take about a 1 inch diagonal back section. We're gonna wrap it back and forth within our iron just to give her a really subtle bend in the hair. We want it to look like she just rolled out of bed, but like a really classy bed. I've got my heat set at 350 because Natalie is a blonde, as we can see, and I don't want to start to break down her color molecule from her gloss by using too hot of a setting. The end goal is to have just enough movement to give her a bend, not necessarily an actual curl. Don't mind me. And then when I get over to her curtain fringe, those pieces, I'm just gonna hit with the iron the slightest bit, just tap them to whisk back away from her face. After I let all of the movement cool, I'm gonna grab my favorite Next Day Hair. This is an aerosol texture spray and it is a gift from God. So I like to take this and instead of using a comb or my hands to run through her hair and dishevel it, I'm gonna let the product do it for me. So I like to take my product and hold it to the side and upside down and come in from the underneath. And instead of holding it against her head like so, I like to go in and almost pump it because that's gonna give her more of that natural messy look. I'm gonna have Natalie hang your head upside down. I'm gonna take my hands from the underneath. Okay, now you flip back up. and allow that natural movement to speak for itself instead of forcing it on my own, because I want it polished, but not overly polished. How are we feeling about this look?
Love it.
Adult learning has shown that if we use a new technique within 24 hours of learning it, that we are more likely to continue to utilize it each and every day with all of our clients. So before we end our time together today, I would love to get some feedback from you guys on what you can take away from today that you're excited to use behind the chair moving forward. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Get some shares? Awesome.
I'll definitely use the flipping the hair technique because for me, like you said, I always want to layer shorter hair on the top. And I do find several times it was kind of, I never knew why. I wasn't getting the results I wanted when I layered the shortest layer on top. So that explained it perfectly.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your share. I appreciate it.
I think for me, doing channel cutting at natural fall and then paying attention to body position is something that we all can really
Yes.
remember and keep.
Yes, take it from my Quasimodo. Hunch. Body positioning is key.
I think for me that I just need to keep in mind whenever I'm going in to texturize any sort of hair type, dense or fine, that I need to make sure I drop the length out first. That way I'm not removing any wanted weight from the perimeter.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Thank you so much for your share. Thanks everybody so much for allowing me to come into your home and demo an awesome haircut for you guys. I truly, genuinely hope that everyone can take away quite a bit from today and that you feel like you can really elevate the level of creativity within your cuts for your individual type of clientele. If anybody ever has any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out. I'm always here, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank